The Last Hope of Humanity, A Race Against Time. Chapter 1. Escape from Earth. The sky was orange and gray with ash and debris, and the ground shook with every explosion. Aaliyah stumbled, her heart pounding in her chest, as she tried to keep her balance on the shaking earth. She glanced back at the chaos behind her. The city was in ruins. Buildings collapsed, overturned cars and buses littered the streets, and people ran in every direction, crying and shouting. Aaliyah turned her focus back on her mission. She couldn't go back now. She had to find her spacecraft and escape to safety. Everything depended on it. Aaliyah was part of a team of astronomers who had discovered an Earth-like planet in another galaxy. They had quickly realized that it was the last hope for humanity, as Earth was on the brink of destruction. Aaliyah had been responsible for the final preparations for the mission and was now the only one left on Earth. She ran through the rubble, her breathing labored and her legs aching. The spacecraft was just up ahead. But then, she heard voices. Aaliyah's heart raced in her chest as she hid behind a ruined car, peering out to see two men with guns. They were staring at the same spacecraft she was headed to. Aaliyah's mind raced. She knew she had to get past them, but how? She thought fast, scanning her surroundings for anything that could help her. She spotted a nearby gas pipe that was damaged, leaking fuel. Aaliyah quickly concocted a plan and made her move. She drew closer to the two men, shooting glances back and forth to make sure she wasn't seen. She got very close without the men noticing, slipping into the shadows. As one of them passed by, she made her move. Aaliyah grabbed the man's arm and twisted it until he dropped the gun. She quickly disarmed both of them, grabbed the guns, and ran for the spacecraft. She could see it now. It was right in front of her, gleaming in the scattered sunlight. She sprinted towards it, ignoring the ache in her side and the screams of the men she'd left behind. She couldn't stop until she was safe in the spacecraft. Aaliyah climbed aboard and slammed the door shut, breathing hard. She took a deep breath and quickly set the spacecraft to launch. She knew she had to escape Earth before it was too late. As the spacecraft rose up, Aaliyah looked down at her once beautiful planet. The place she had called home was now unrecognizable, a hellscape of destruction and devastation. She felt a pang of sadness and regret at leaving, but she knew it was for the best. Humanity's only hope lay in the stars. As the spacecraft soared higher and higher, Aaliyah looked up at the infinite expanse of space, a sense of awe and wonder washing over her. But there was no time to admire the view. She had a mission to complete, a new planet to reach, and thousands of lives to save. Aaliyah sat back in her chair and took a deep breath, steeling herself for the journey ahead. She had no idea what awaited her at the other end, but she was ready for anything. Chapter 2. Journey to the Unknown. Aaliyah had been traveling through space for weeks. The monotonous hum of the spacecraft's engines the only sound breaking the silence. She had been consumed by her own thoughts, hissing curses under her breath, and reviewing the survival guides that she'd been given for the new planet. The sight of the other planet was a welcome distraction. It was much like Earth, with blue oceans and white clouds. As Aaliyah began to orbit, she got her first real view of the landmasses. Dense greenery, glistening waterfalls, and rugged mountains stretching as far as her eyes could see. She quickly realized that this place was no desert wasteland. It was teeming with life. The sky was dotted with birds of all shapes and sizes, and the trees below swayed in the gentle breeze. The fact that it was uninhabited made it all the more tempting as a new, fresh start for humanity. Aaliyah felt her heart swell with hope and optimism. But as her spacecraft approached the planet's orbit, Aaliyah felt a jolt, and the instrument started beeping madly. She struggled to regain control of the spacecraft, but it was too late. She was plummeting towards the planet's surface, with no way of stopping. As the spacecraft hurtled through the atmosphere, Aaliyah grasped for anything to halt her free fall. But it was no use. The ship finally crashed with a bone-shattering force. When Aaliyah finally came to, she was in darkness. Her body ached all over, and she couldn't move. A sudden breeze made her realize that there was a hole in her spaceship. She managed to crawl out and was struck dumb by the devastation around her. The once beautiful planet was now ravaged by storms, with all flora and fauna destroyed. Ash and smoke drifted across the blackened wasteland. Aaliyah realized that she was not the only one to realize the goldmine that this planet could be. Another outpost had been established here, but they weren't friendly. Persimmon was a madman, determined to keep control of everything he owned. And he owned this planet. Aaliyah had to find a way to contact Earth and let them know what had happened. She knew it was unlikely that they'd pick up her distress signal in the ocean of static right now. But she had to try. She remembered her survival training and set off on foot, trudging through the barren wilderness in search of some sort of signal. Any kind of contact would give her the will to push on, no matter how low her chances were. As she hiked, Aaliyah noted a thin blue smudge in the distance. It glimmered and shone like fresh water, and her heart leapt. If she could make it to the lake, she could potentially set up a distress beacon there. But it wouldn't be easy. The terrain was rough, and Aaliyah was in a race against time. She quickened her pace, fueled by desperation and exhaustion. She could feel blisters forming on her feet, the sweat running down her face in rivulets. As she neared the lake, Aaliyah suddenly heard a sound that made her froze. She slowly turned and saw a group of men with guns emerging from the grove of trees nearby. Persimmon's men. They were here, and they had come for her. Aaliyah knew she couldn't outrun them, so she hid behind a rock, listening to them as they searched for her. She had to get to the lake, no matter what. The survival of humanity depended on her. She waited and watched, patiently biding her time. When the men were distracted, Aaliyah made a run for it. She sprinted towards the water, her heart pounding in her chest. She made it to the lake and dove in, submerged herself in the cool waters, gasping for air. As she surfaced, she could hear the men shouting at her from the shore, their guns firing. She quickly ducked under the water again, holding her breath. As the gunfire ceased and the men retreated, Aaliyah swam to the shore and collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She knew she had to move quickly to get her distress beacon set up. The clock was ticking. She crawled on her stomach until she found an opening in the rock faces, close to the water. Aaliyah pushed her ship's beacon, which acted as an energy source, through the gap and set it up. Then she waited. Days passed, and she couldn't gather the strength to move from her spot. She spent her time surviving, picking berries and catching fish in the lake she'd risked her life to get to. Finally, there was hope. One day, her radio crackled to life. Aaliyah had finally made contact with Earth. Her message was brief, a garbled mess, barely understandable. But all that mattered was that they knew she was alive, and they were coming to get her. Chapter 3. A sinister force. Aaliyah was overjoyed at the thought of rescue, but her joy quickly faded when she looked up and saw storm clouds gathering on the horizon. They looked unnatural, too uniform, too perfect. As they drew closer, she realized that they were not normal storms. There was something sinister about them. The storms slammed into the planet's surface like a sledgehammer, battering everything beneath them with rain and lightning. Aaliyah huddled in her makeshift shelter, praying for the storm to pass. But it didn't. Day after day, the storms raged, unrelenting and unforgiving. Aaliyah realized that the sinister force that was at work on this planet. As the days turned into weeks, Aaliyah grew more and more worried. She had no idea how long she could survive out here. Her most basic needs were scarcely being met, and the rainwater had become increasingly contaminated. She needed to find clean water and food, but she knew there would be no peace from the storms. On the 13th day, the rain ceased, and the skies cleared. The sickly sweet smell of rotting flesh hung in the air. Aaliyah realized that she was in grave danger. The storm had passed, but the sinister force was still at work. Aaliyah resolved to leave. Using every speck of strength she had left in her body, she started to move. Aaliyah had no idea what was at the heart of the sinister force, but she knew she had to find out. She set out towards the mountains, driven by a desperate need to survive. As she climbed higher, the air grew thinner, and the going got harder. Aaliyah could feel herself succumbing to dizziness and exhaustion. She rested for a little while and continued upward. When Aaliyah finally reached the top, she gasped in surprise. She had found what she was looking for: a massive chasm, the source of the stormy weather. Aaliyah felt numb as she realized what lay at the bottom. The sinister force was an enormous robotic monster, towering over her with its metallic arms glistening in the light. Aaliyah was frozen with fear as the creature approached her. The sound of its metallic footsteps made her blood run cold. The creature's eyes glowed an eerie blue, its mouth opening to reveal razor-sharp teeth. It let out a thunderous roar, shaking the ground beneath her feet. Aaliyah could feel the sweat on her forehead and the pounding of her heart against her chest. She suddenly realized that she was standing face to face with the most dangerous creation of human beings in the universe. The metallic beast lunged forward, arms extended. And at that moment, Aaliyah felt her mind snap into action. She reached for the gun in her belt, charging it from her ship's power core. The creature had reached her, but she aimed her shot and fired. Aaliyah could hardly believe her eyes. The creature staggered backward, creaking and groaning, sparks flying from its body. The impact had caused some kind of internal damage. The creature suddenly shook, the glow of its eyes fading. Then it fell, tumbling down into the darkness of the chasm, into the abyss. Aaliyah collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. She had succeeded where so many others had failed. She'd vanquished the evil that was the sinister force. But now she was left to ponder the implications of her actions. Had she just sentenced humanity to a similar fate? Had she become the judge, jury, and executioner of everything that represented mankind's technological might? Was she, a mere survivor, responsible for the destiny of humanity? Chapter 4. Betrayal. Aaliyah was jolted awake by the sound of a ship's engines. She groggily rubbed her eyes and stumbled to her feet, rushing out to see what was happening. There, in front of her spacecraft, was a group of armed men, led by Persimmon. They had found her. Aaliyah pulled out her gun and stood her ground, ready to fight for her life, ready to fight for humanity. But Persimmon was not interested in fighting. He offered her a deal. He would take her to their base camp, where she could contact Earth and complete her mission, in exchange for her scientific knowledge and the spacecraft. Aaliyah knew that she couldn't trust Persimmon, but it was her only chance to complete the mission. She reluctantly agreed to his terms and boarded his ship. As they traveled towards the base camp, Aaliyah could feel a sense of unease tugging at her. Persimmon seemed too pleased, too happy, and too self-assured. She knew that something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. When they arrived at the base camp, Aaliyah was surprised by what she saw. It was a sprawling complex, complete with laboratories, communication rooms, and everything they'd need to survive in this unknown world. Aaliyah quickly realized that this group of people had been preparing for this moment for years. She was ushered into the communication room where Persimmon handed her a headset. Aaliyah quickly tried to make contact with Earth, but the connection was blocked. She tried every frequency she knew, but nothing worked. Something was interfering with the signal, something more powerful than any natural phenomenon. Aaliyah knew it must have been Persimmon. But why? She had made a deal with him, and he seemed to be holding up his end of the bargain. Aaliyah was left with a sense of confusion, growing anger, and growing fear. As she turned around to confront Persimmon, she saw it. The metallic robot was there, its blue eyes glowing ominously. She realized that this was another one of Persimmon's creations. Persimmon revealed his plan. He'd been monitoring Aaliyah's every move, waiting for her to lead him to the sinister force. Persimmon intended to weaponize it and sell it to the highest bidder. He had no intention of using it to save humanity. Aaliyah was furious. She had risked her life to get to this planet, to get to the safer place for humanity. She had been working tirelessly to ensure that humanity survives, only to discover that the person she trusted and made a deal with had betrayed and used her. Aaliyah raised her gun, ready to fight. Persimmon stepped forward, his own gun drawn. But before their showdown could reach its deadly conclusion, the room erupted in chaos. Another group of people stormed into the room, led by Persimmon's right-hand man. Aaliyah realized then that Persimmon had double-crossed all of them, planning on selling the sinister force to both sides of the conflict. The two groups quickly engaged each other, guns blazing. Aaliyah took cover and used her hand-to-hand combat skills to take down anyone who got too close. The fighting was intense, leaving destruction and chaos all around them. In the end, Aaliyah emerged victorious. Persimmon was dead, and his technology was destroyed. All she was left with was a mess of debris, corpses, and the silence of space. But there was still work to be done. Aaliyah was determined to complete her mission, to contact Earth, and to ensure humanity's survival. She couldn't let Pasimon's betrayal be in vain. Chapter 5. Fight for survival. Aaliyah knew that she had to get back to her spacecraft, but it wasn't going to be easy. The entire base camp was on high alert, and Pasimon's men were patrolling the area, still vying for control. Aaliyah carefully made her way through the camp, staying hidden in the shadows and moving slowly to avoid detection. She could hear gunfire in the distance, but she couldn't tell who was winning. She just knew that she had to get out of here, and fast. After hours of stealth and stealthy maneuvering, Aaliyah finally made it to her spacecraft. It was still intact, but she knew it wouldn't be for long. She quickly got inside and started up the engines, desperate to get away from this world and never look back. As she soared upwards, she could see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon once more. The sinister force was still out there, and she had to make a choice. Would she stay and try to destroy it, or would she run and warn Earth of the danger? Aaliyah knew what she had to do. She would not abandon humanity to the sinister force. She turned her spacecraft towards the metallic monster, and sped towards it with everything she had. As she approached, the monster roared to life, its armored skin glistening in the sunlight. Aaliyah fired her weapons, her shots causing sparks and explosions to ripple across the creature's frame. But it was not enough. The monster raised its arm and sent a blast of energy towards her spacecraft, sending it spiraling out of control. Aaliyah knew she was in trouble. She had to get control of the ship before it crashed, but it was spinning out of control. Suddenly, the ship slammed into the ground, hard. The impact knocked Aaliyah unconscious. When she came to, she was still in the cockpit, but something was very different. She could feel an energy pulsing through her veins, a newfound strength that she had never experienced before. Aaliyah looked out the window, and she saw the monster approaching her. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready to fight with all her might. In a flash of light, Aaliyah emerged from the wreckage, her power surging through her, and her eyes glowing blue. She charged towards the monster with fury, unleashing everything that she had. Aaliyah was a force to be reckoned with, easily evading the monster's attacks and striking back with her newfound strength. It was a fierce battle that lasted for what seemed like an eternity. In the end, Aaliyah emerged victorious, standing over the defeated monster. But she knew that this was only the beginning. The sinister force was not the only danger out there, waiting for humanity. Aaliyah knew that she had to keep fighting, keep pushing forward. She left the planet behind and set her sights on Earth, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. She knew that she had found her true calling, to fight for humanity, to fight for survival. Chapter 6. The Last Stand. Aaliyah's return to Earth was met with mixed reactions. Some hailed her as a hero, a savior of humanity, while others saw her as a dangerous rogue agent, meddling in affairs that she had no business in. But for Aaliyah, it didn't matter. She knew what she had to do, and she was willing to face whatever consequences came her way. She explained everything: the sinister force, Pasimon's treachery, and the danger that the universe posed to Earth. But it was a hard sell. The government was skeptical, and many were reluctant to act, believing that the threat wasn't real or that it could be dealt with through diplomacy. But Aaliyah knew that time was running out. She needed the government to take action, to allocate resources, to prepare for the worst. It was only a matter of time before the sinister force came to Earth, and they needed to be ready for it. As she fought to rally support, Aaliyah found help from unexpected sources. She joined forces with a group of scientists, engineers, and military personnel who believed in her cause. Together, they worked tirelessly, preparing for the coming storm. And then, it happened. The sinister force arrived. The sky turned black, as if it were night, even though it was the middle of the day. The ground shook beneath their feet, and ominous clouds swirled overhead. Pasimon's weapon had arrived, and it was every bit as menacing as Aaliyah remembered. The group of scientists, engineers, and military personnel huddled together, preparing for the worst. They knew that this was their last stand, and they were ready to fight to the death if necessary. The sinister force advanced, its colossal metallic frame casting a dark shadow over the landscape. Aaliyah stepped forward, ready to face it head-on. She braced herself for the impact and unleashed a barrage of attacks, using every weapon at her disposal. The battle was intense, with Aaliyah's team facing off against a godlike creation of mankind. The sinister force was relentless, its attacks coming at them from all sides. But the team held their ground, unyielding, inspired by Aaliyah's bravery and determination. For hours, the battle raged on, with neither side giving ground. But then, something unexpected happened. The monster began to falter, its movements slowing, its energy flickering. Aaliyah saw her chance and charged towards it, her eyes glowing and her fists clenched. With all her might, Aaliyah struck the sinister force, sending it tumbling to the ground. It landed with a deafening thud, and for a moment, everything was silent. Aaliyah and her team approached the fallen monster, unsure of what to expect. But then, they realized that it was dead, destroyed by their efforts. It was a monumental achievement, a victory for humanity. But even as they celebrated their triumph, they knew that their work was far from over. There were still dangers out there, still threats that they needed to prepare for. But for now, Aaliyah and her team could rest easy, knowing that they had saved the world. As the group walked away from the scene, the sun started to shine, the sky cleared, and the world returned to normal once more. Aaliyah knew, however, that nothing would ever be the same again. But she was ready for whatever the future held, ready to continue fighting, ready to protect human beings from their own mistakes. Chapter 7. A New Hope. The aftermath of the battle was chaotic. News of the sinister force's defeat spread like wildfire, and Aaliyah became an overnight celebrity. But even as she enjoyed the attention, she knew that there was still work to be done. The government finally began to take her warnings seriously, funneling money into research and development. Aaliyah's team was given access to the best equipment and facilities, and they continued to work towards finding new ways to protect humanity. But it wasn't just the government that had been inspired by Aaliyah's bravery. People all over the world began to speak out, demanding change, demanding a better way of life. They were fed up with the old ways of thinking and ready for something new. And Aaliyah was ready to provide it. She became a vocal advocate for change, working tirelessly to build a better future for everyone. Her message was simple: that humanity needed to work together, that they needed to put aside their differences and focus on what was truly important: survival. And her message resonated with people. Aaliyah quickly became a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in a dark world. People looked up to her, believing that if she could defeat the sinister force, then there was nothing that they couldn't achieve together. And soon, a movement was born. A movement for change, for unity, for a brighter future. It started small, with just a few people banding together to make a difference. But it grew, and it grew quickly, until it became a worldwide phenomenon. Aaliyah's team was at the forefront of the movement, using their skills and knowledge to bring about change. They worked on everything from climate control to space exploration, pouring their hearts and souls into every project. And with each success, the movement grew even stronger. In the end, Aaliyah and her team had done something truly remarkable. They had not only saved humanity from a deadly threat, but they had given them hope, something that they had not had in a long time. They had reminded people of what they were capable of what they could achieve when they worked together towards a common goal. And Aaliyah knew that this was just the beginning. There would be new challenges, new threats, and new obstacles to overcome. But as long as they worked together, as long as they had hope, they had a chance to create a better future for everyone. She looked out into the world, seeing people standing up for what they believed in, working towards something greater than themselves. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. She knew that they had come a long way, but there was still so much left to do. But with the love and support of the people of the world, with her team by her side, and with the hope that burned brightly in their hearts, they would never give up. They would continue to fight, to work, to push forward. And no matter what the future held, they would face it together, a united, unbreakable front, ready for anything that came their way. For Aaliyah, this was her greatest victory, her greatest achievement. And it was just the beginning.